Welcome, and thank you for joining me for this Ramadan reflection. Let's just jump right in with a pretty serious question. What happens when you're the one in charge? When you finally get that authority, or that influence, or a little bit of power over someone or something. What is the real test of your faith then?
We often think about faith being tested when we're weak, right? When we're going through a struggle. And of course, that's absolutely true. But Juzʼ 5 of the Quran shines a spotlight on a whole different kind of test, one that might be even more revealing. And that is the test of your faith when you actually have power.
So as we continue in Surah An-Nisa, you can feel the Quran building something really profound. It's not just about individual belief, it's laying down the entire ethical architecture for a just society. And the core theme? Well, it's absolutely unmistakable. All power, whether it's big or small, comes with accountability. It is a trust, an amana, that we are completely responsible for.
Okay, so you have this grand idea of an ethical architecture, but how does it actually work in the real world? Well, the Quran immediately takes this high-level concept and grounds it in the most practical, tangible areas of our lives. And it specifically focuses on those who have less power, those who are most vulnerable to its misuse. And what's so fascinating here is how the Quran steps in to regulate both our private and our public lives. It gives us rules for marriage, calling it a sacred covenant, not just some contract. It commands absolute, rock-solid integrity in our finances and inheritance. The message couldn't be clearer. Our faith isn't meant to just float above our daily lives. It's meant to structure them, to protect people from being exploited. And as you read through these verses, you'll probably notice a recurring theme: the protection of orphans. They're mentioned again and again and again. So why? Why this specific focus? What is the deeper principle that the Quran is trying to teach us here?
Well, the answer gets at something truly profound. The Quran is teaching us that the true measure of our justice isn't how we treat our equals or the people who can fight back. No, the real test of our character and the health of our entire society is how we treat those who depend on our mercy, the ones who can't defend themselves. That's where our commitment is really put to the test.
Okay, so all of this is building up to something. It's leading us to one of the most powerful, most demanding verses in the entire Quran. This verse really serves as the moral anchor for this whole discussion on justice, and it sets a standard that is just absolute. Just let that sink in for a second. Stand firmly for justice, even if it is against yourselves. This isn't about blind loyalty to your tribe or your family. It's not about your emotions. Islamic justice is meant to transcend all of that. Family ties, personal feelings, and especially self-interest. It demands this radical, almost uncomfortable level of objectivity. So here's the bottom line. This verse is commanding a deep, profound moral courage. It's about choosing divine truth over your own personal comfort. It's about choosing unwavering integrity over protecting your reputation, or even the reputation of the people you love. It's an incredibly difficult standard, but an absolutely essential one. All right, so we have this powerful command for how to act on the outside. But let's shift gears now and look at the internal, the spiritual dimension of this. Because the Quran isn't just about rules. It's deeply, deeply concerned with the state of our hearts when we're the ones holding power.
A lot of the time, spiritual traditions focus on the trials of being weak or oppressed. But the Quran is just as concerned, maybe even more concerned, with the spiritual dangers of being strong. It really understands the deep, subtle seduction of power and how it can corrupt even the best of us if we aren't incredibly vigilant.
Because the moment you gain a little influence or wealth or authority, your ego starts whispering in your ear. It tells you things like, you deserve this, or don't worry, you're justified. And maybe the most dangerous one of all, go ahead, no one will ever notice. See, power just magnifies what's already in our hearts. If the heart is sincere, power becomes a tool for service. But if it's corrupt, it becomes oppression, fast.
And there's a really deliberate structure in this jizz. It's not random at all. It starts with our most private, intimate relationships. Then it moves outward to our public and financial responsibilities. Then it addresses political integrity and hypocrisy. And finally, it lands on our ultimate spiritual accountability to God. The message is simple. You can't box up your faith. It has to be consistent across every single part of your life. And look, this isn't just about ancient kings and rulers. In our modern lives, power is often much more subtle. It's the authority a manager has over an employee. It's the influence we have with a few thousand followers on social media. It's the financial independence we might have over someone else, or even just the roles we play within our own families.
The principle is exactly the same. So, let's bring all of this home. How can we take these huge lessons and turn them into a real personal practice this Ramadan? How can we learn to properly carry the weight of all these trusts that we've been given?
So tonight, I want to invite you to reflect on this first question and be really, truly honest with yourself. Where in my life do I hold power over someone who is weaker or more vulnerable than me? Maybe it's a younger sibling, an employee, your children, or even just someone who comes to you for advice. Just identify where you have that influence. And now, let's go a layer deeper. Think back to those whispers from the ego we talked about. Have you ever justified a small, unfair action, a harsh word? Maybe you told yourself it wasn't a big deal or that nobody would ever find out. Just be honest with yourself. And finally, the big one. Ask yourself about the purpose of your power. Is your influence genuinely being used to serve and help other people? Or has it maybe subtly become a tool for elevating yourself, your own status, your own ego, your own comfort? Based on that reflection, here are just a few really practical things you could try to do tonight. Try to rectify one small, quiet injustice. Maybe it just needs a sincere apology or a kind word. Return something you owe, whether it's $5 or a long overdue thank you. Or maybe just summon the courage to speak the truth in one situation where it would be so much easier to just stay silent.
And let's just take a moment to close our reflection together with this prayer. O Allah, grant us integrity when we have influence, and please make our power a means of service and not a burden on our souls. Ameen. You know, when you really boil it all down, Juz៍ 5 is teaching us that authority is a heavy, heavy trust. So as we go forward, the real question isn't whether or not you have power, because let's face it, we all have it in some form. The real question is your heart strong enough and pure enough to carry it? This Ramadan reflection is a humble effort from the Living the Wisdom of the Quran podcast by Mir Ali Shah. We ask for forgiveness and Allah's acceptance for any mistakes, including any AI-related mispronunciations or errors. We really hope this has been a beneficial reflection for you this Ramadan. Thank you so much for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.